Should the Browns go out and trade for Jimmy Garoppolo? Did Kayvon Thibodeaux get taken out by a dirty hit this weekend? And who will take spots 20 through 11 on my NFL preseason power rankings? I answer all these questions and more on this episode of the Sperdog Football Podcast. Let's jump right into it. What's good, everyone? Welcome to the Sperdog Football Podcast. I am your host, Jack Sperry. It is Tuesday, August 23rd, and okay, let's just jump right into the news. So this last weekend, Kayvon Thibodeaux, number 5 overall draft pick in this year's draft, who was having a great camp, by the way, had a really ugly-looking injury where his knee got buckled under an opposing blocker, and he sprained his MCL, and he's going to be out 3 to 4 weeks. Now, that's not the reason why I'm talking about this, okay? You know, the injury itself is newsworthy, but the reason why this is such a big story is because there's been so many people in the media that have been blasting the guy that made the hit, Thaddeus Moss, a Bengal player who laid on the hit that led to the injury, and people are calling him a coward and calling him a dirty player, and all of these things because a hit that he had led to an injury. First of all, this is ridiculous, okay? Anybody that knows kind of like the ins and outs of what happened knows that this was not a dirty play. This was not a cowardly block, right? Moss was executing a normal cut block that you see in zone-style run schemes every single week in the NFL, right? It's his job to go across the formation and block Thibodeaux, okay? And there's 2 ways that he could do that. He could cut block them, which is go low and meet them low, not necessarily going for the knee, but going low. And the other way is to take him on straight on and meet him with his shoulders. Kvon thought that Moss was going to meet him high, so Kvon tried to do what's called a gladiator technique, where he was going to essentially use his arm and shoulder to kind of brace himself and kind of use it almost as like a shield, which is why it's called like a gladiator technique, because it's like a gladiator with a sword or with a shield trying to shield himself. But, once he makes that decision and he goes for the gladiator technique, and then in that same moment, Thaddeus Moss goes for the cut block and he goes low, like Kayvon's body was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Neither guy did really anything wrong per se. It was just an unfortunate accident. And for someone to call that a cowardly play or a dirty play, or to slander Moss as if he tried to hurt Kayvon Thibodeaux, it just shows me that some of these people that are in the sports media today, there's a couple guys on ESPN that were doing this, and some of them know better. Some of them played football. They know what a cut block is. They know what a proper technique for a cut block is, and Thaddeus Moss did that. Okay, so the idea that they know what that is, and they still go on live television and call this man a coward and a dirty player and slander his name for an accident and an unfortunate situation, I think it's just terrible. I think it's terrible that people would be willing to do that. And if you turn on ESPN, you're going to hear guys call him a coward, call him a dirty player, and it's not right. So I wanted to start the show off today by standing up for Thaddeus Moss. I'm sure there's no one in the world that feels worse about Kayvon Thibodeaux's injury than Thaddeus Moss. Okay, it's a preseason game. Nobody wants to hurt another player ever. Okay, sure, they might want to dominate their opponent on the field in terms of the field of play, but nobody wants to actually hurt anybody. So to say that Thaddeus Moss is a coward or dirty or anything of the sort, I think it's just irresponsible if you're a member of the media saying that. Okay, so yesterday we talked about Deshaun Watson and his 11-game suspension, and how I don't think that the Browns are a playoff team, even with Watson coming back for the last 6 games of the year. So that brings up the question of whether it's a good idea for them to bring in Jimmy Garoppolo. Would that change how I feel about the situation? So here's the situation. On paper, it makes sense to bring Jimmy G in. They can afford to pay him. They have a lot of cap space. This is an offense that he can easily pick up, as it's similar to the San Francisco system. It has very similar terminology, and it's a Super Bowl ready roster. So Jimmy Garoppolo would want to come there as well. All of that stuff makes sense. But something to consider here is that what if Jimmy is massively successful if he comes in? Let's say he goes 9-2 or 10-1 to start the year. Are you really going to bench him? Are you really going to bench a quarterback that's gone 10-1 with that roster? I think that if Jimmy is successful, if Jimmy does what you're going to be bringing him in and paying him over $20 million to do, which is to win games, if he does that job, it's going to create a sift in that locker room between the Deshaun Watson supporters and the Jimmy Garoppolo supporters. And, having two quarterbacks like that legitimately have a reason to expect to be the starting quarterback, it's not a good situation to be in, man. It splits apart the locker room. NFL teams really do better when they have one singular leader voice at the quarterback position. And if Jimmy Garoppolo comes in and really does a great job, if anything, you're hurting the team because you're dividing the locker room between supporters for one guy versus another. When really, to have success, I think you have to have one singular voice and everybody backing one guy. So at the end of the day, I think this decision will come down to how they feel about Jacoby Brissett. If they truly feel confident in Jacoby Brissett's ability to lead this offense and win football games, I think they'll stick with him at least for the start of the year. And if at any point they don't feel Jacoby is up to snuff, that's when I think it makes sense to go and get Garoppolo. But, obviously you don't want to wait too long either, because Garoppolo does need to develop chemistry with guys. He needs to do all these things to make sure that he will be successful in this offense. Okay, power rankings time. We're going to be doing spots 20 through 11 today. These last two episodes here, we'll be doing 10 teams per episode. So today we'll be doing 10 or 20 through 11, and then tomorrow I'll be giving my top 10 teams in the NFL today. So with number 20, I have the Washington Commanders. And in terms of roster, I think this is one of the most underrated rosters in the game today. Really good in the trenches, top 5 defensive and offensive lines. I think on defense, they have a pretty darn talented secondary. They added Kyle Fuller, really, really good player. They have really dynamic weapons on the perimeter on offense as well. They added Jahan Dotson in the draft. They still have Terry McLaurin. They drafted De'Ami Brown, a deep threat, in last year's draft. Lots of good deep threats on this team. And then you've got two pretty darn good running backs. Antonio Gibson hasn't looked great in the preseason so far, but Brian Robinson has looked phenomenal. And then running behind that offensive line, I think this is going to be a successful offense. And then when you look at Carson Wentz, is he the best quarterback in the league? No. Carson Wentz is the reason why they're number 20 and not in the top 10 right now. But he is a good fit for this Air Coryell power run game mixed with play action deep shots kind of offense. Carson Wentz is at his best when he has his first read, and his first read is deep, and then he can, in rhythm, throw the ball with accuracy. That is what he does best. Where Carson Wentz falters is having to go through multiple progressions and then throw an accurate ball to the intermediate part of the field. Carson Wentz is really weird, where he is a lot more accurate to the deep part of the field than he is to the intermediate part of the field. And the problem with that is that it's really hard to be successful in this league if you can't throw intermediate routes accurately, especially on plays where defenses know that you have to throw the football. Wentz isn't very effective at that. And then usually the receivers that he has success in those kinds of situations, they're usually bigger receivers, hands guys, Alshon Jeffrey, Michael Pittman, big receivers with good hands. Washington has nobody like that on this team. Logan Thomas is the closest thing they have to a big hands receiver, and he's a tight end. So I don't think this team is going to be very good on third and medium or third and long. I don't think this team is going to be particularly effective in the 2-minute drill on offense. But the thing with this roster, when you have a roster this good, and you can really bruise another defense with your running game and then throw it deep, is that you can destroy some bad football teams, man. Like, they're going to kill bad football teams because they can dominate people in the trenches, and then they can really be explosive with their offense, with the ground and pound run game mixed with the really, really explosive deep passing game. So I think this is a bad team killer, but I think when they have to play good football teams, like most of the teams on this list, they're going to struggle and they will lose some close games this year. Moving on to number 19, I have the Dallas Cowboys, and plain simply, they regressed this offseason, right? They lost Amari Cooper and Cedric Wilson, 2 really good receivers. They lost Randy Gregory, underrated edge rusher. But overall, this roster is still pretty good. Dak Prescott is still the best quarterback in this division. I like the coordinators in Kellen Moore and Dan Quinn. Micah Parsons is obviously fantastic. DeMarcus Lawrence is obviously fantastic. Their secondary is okay. There's not really an impact player in their secondary. And don't come at me with Trayvon Diggs. Trayvon Diggs is not a good player. He's not good. He gives up a ton of big plays. He's completely an undisciplined football player. And speaking of undisciplined, Dallas under Mike McCarthy has been at the top of penalty yards and overall penalties accrued over the season ever since he got there. Like, this team is not disciplined. They're going to be heavily penalized. Their offensive line is good on paper, but if they get like one injury, they don't have a ton of depth. Ezekiel Elliott hasn't looked great in camp so far this year. It looks like Tony Pollard is probably going to be the number 1 back in that offense. And then receiver-wise, they're not as deep as they have been in the past. I like their tight ends. I like their coordinators. I like the quarterback. Things I don't like, penalties, Mike McCarthy's game management, just overall consistency. I'm not sure he's going to be there for Dallas in 2022. Number 18, I have the New York Jets. Now, the Jets are actually really, really talented, but they're also really inexperienced. Zach Wilson, he has the talent to be one of the best quarterbacks in this league. We'll see if that comes to fruition here in year 2. I don't think he's going to make like a MVP type jump like we've seen from Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or even Carson Wentz way back in the day. But I think there will be a jump from last season. He had some really nice moments, particularly in the Buccaneers game towards the end of the year. That's really encouraging. And then the offensive line is underrated big time. It's definitely a top 10. It could be a top 5 offensive line, to be honest with you. They have good running backs in Michael Carter and Breece Hall. I like their receivers with Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, and Garrett Wilson. And then on defense, you've got the 2 first-rounders, Sauce Gardner, Jermaine Johnson. And then you also have guys like Quinnen Williams, Carl Lawson, C.J. Mosley. I mean, they've got some dudes on this roster. And if Zach Wilson makes a year 2 jump and really shows what he's capable of, like he did at the end of last season, this team is going to be able to turn some heads and really be in some really close games. Like, this team is talented enough to beat anybody in this league, including Buffalo, right? In that division, I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets beat the Bills one time this year. It wouldn't surprise me. But I have them down here at 18, and I have them missing the playoffs because of their lack of experience. They're very young, they're very inexperienced, and they're playing against a lot of legit teams in the AFC this year. They have a really tough schedule. So I think they're still probably a year away. They need to get a little bit more playing experience before they can really take their place in what is shaping up to be a really loaded division there in the AFC East. But yeah, for now, I think they're sitting comfortably at number 18. Number 17, I have the Las Vegas Raiders. And plain and simply, I love the quarterback and I love the weapons, and there's not much else that I like. I like Josh McDaniels and his offense. I think Patrick Graham is a really good defensive coordinator, but this offensive line is a mess. It's one of the worst in football. And then on defense, there's not a whole lot of talent to go around there either. I think Patrick Graham will get the most out of this defensive unit, but at the end of the day, you need talent in this league to succeed, and this is by far the least talented team in the most loaded conference, arguably in NFL history. I think Las Vegas is still a good team. That's why I have them up here at 17. I think Derek Carr is fantastic. I think he's a potential future Hall of Famer. And mixed with this offense, Josh McDaniels has been one of the best offensive play callers in football for a very long time now. Match that with Darren Waller, Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, all these dudes that they got in terms of offensive weaponry. They're going to eventually get there. But as for this season, I still think that they still have too many holes on the offensive line and on defense to succeed and make the playoffs in that loaded AFC West. Number 16, I have the Browns. And I don't have these guys making the playoffs either, right? Dallas is at 19. I have them in the playoffs. That's how bad the NFC is. And then we have number 16 here with Cleveland, and they don't make the playoffs. I think at the end of the day, when you play in Cleveland, if you have a really great running game, which the Browns have, and a really great defense, which the Browns have, and a really good head coach, which I think the Browns have, you're going to find success, and you're going to find ways to win football games, especially against bad football teams. So, are they going to be terrible with Jacoby Brissett? No. But do I expect them to make the playoffs this year? No. If they make the playoffs with Deshaun Watson fully operational, I think that they have a legitimate chance to win a Super Bowl. But the reason why I have them this low here at 16 and not in my top 10 is because I'm not sure if 11 games of Jacoby Brissett is going to be, and then 6 games of a potentially rusty Deshaun Watson is going to be enough to make the playoffs in a loaded AFC. So Cleveland's another team where I think they're a year away. Deshaun Watson, another offseason with his guys away before they really ascend to the place where they could be as an organization. Okay, number 15, I have the San Francisco 49ers. And it's possible I have them too high, and it's possible I have them too low, which is why I kind of have them smack dab in the middle of the league standings here. Trey Lance is massively talented. If he has the kind of year 2 jump that we've seen from other MVP-type guys, then sure, this is a Super Bowl caliber team, and they're probably a top 5 team in the league. But the reports coming out of Niner camp is that his accuracy has been not very good, and there's been some days where he's thrown like less than 50% completion percentage in practice when he can't get hit, which is super concerning if you ask me. But at the end of the day, this is such a good roster, and Kyle Shanahan is so good at scheming up his guys and DeMeco Ryans is a fantastic defensive coordinator as well, that this team's going to find ways to succeed no matter what. I think Niner fans are going to be really frustrated with ball placement at times. It's going to be a roller coaster ride. But at the end of the day, I think in the NFC, they are a playoff team, and they're probably a 1-round exit. Okay, so Philadelphia, I have at number 14. I have them taking their spot atop the NFC East this year. Jalen Hurts, I have some concerns about, which is why they're this low. In terms of overall roster outside of QB, Philly's a top 5 roster in my opinion. The defense is going to be potentially top 5 this year. The offensive line is the best in football. The weapons are really good. The running game should be once again really good. I like Nick Sirianni as an offensive play caller. I have him this low because I don't think Jalen Hurts is a superstar. I think he's fine. I think this Eagles team will win a lot of games in the NFC this year. But I don't think that Jalen Hurts is going to light the league on fire or anything like that. I think there will be progression from last year to this year, but I don't think it's going to be anything earth-shattering. I think this is a very, very solid team, and if you're a solid team in the NFC, you're going to win a lot of football games. So I guess we'll just have to see where Philly shakes out here, but for my rankings, I have them at number 14. Then at number 13, I have the Miami Dolphins, and I am a lot more optimistic about the Dolphins than, say, a Nick Wright on Fox Sports is. Nick Wright says Tua sucks, and there's no way this team is going to be successful. I disagree. I believe in Mike McDaniel. I believe in Tua. I believe what I'm seeing out of camp, which is that he's throwing the ball down the field with accuracy and touch. I believe in the weapons that they have, the speed that they have, and it's just going to scare the crap out of defensive coordinators. I like their running backs. I think their offensive line is much improved after adding a new all-pro left tackle from the Saints. And then the defense, they kept the defensive coordinator that was here before. So it's still going to be Brian Flores' defense. So the defense shouldn't regress in any way either. So I'm a big fan of the Dolphins. I think they're talented enough to beat anybody. And it's possible I have them too low. The reason why I have them this low is if they do make the playoffs, which I don't think they will, it's a first-year head coach, and it's Tua's first year in this offense. Okay, so those two things might lead to a couple of hiccups here and there, but overall, I think Tua is going to establish himself as the guy in Miami for the future. I think Mike McDaniel is going to be a prime Coach of the Year candidate. And I think that this team will just miss the playoffs. So if you want to know the difference between the NFC and the AFC, this next team on my list is number 12 in the NFL, and I don't have them making the playoffs. Okay, my number 12 team is the Tennessee Titans. And the reason why they're here is that they don't have the most talented roster, right? They don't have the most talent, but they're exceptionally well coached. I love Coach Vrabel. Derrick Henry is obviously dominating. The offensive line might not be as good as it's been in years past. But Traylon Burks, the receiver that they got for A.J. Brown in the A.J. Brown trade, he's looked fantastic in camp. They added Robert Woods this year. The defense is going to be fantastic again. They were the number 1 seed in the AFC last year. But they're the number 12 team on my list, and I don't have them in the playoffs. That is how good the AFC is this year. I have a team from the NFC ranked number 19 on my list, and they're making the playoffs. That's the Dallas Cowboys. Tennessee is the 12th best team in the league, in my opinion, and they're out. That just goes to show you the difference of talent that is between the AFC and NFC. Okay, and the last team on my list for today, number 11, I have the Green Bay Packers. Now, Packer fans, I know, okay, this is too low in your opinion. And you have a right to feel that way after 2 consecutive 13-win seasons. Okay, I get it. The problem is, I think that losing Devontae Adams and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, your 2 best deep threat receivers, is going to be an issue. It's going to be a big issue. Aaron Rodgers has not been very compatible with young receivers in his career. Even Devontae Adams took a couple of years to really blossom into the player that he became. And, my confidence in terms of Green Bay's ability to be explosive in the passing game, like they have been the past couple of years, I'm not all too confident in that ability. I think defenses are going to be able to go get in man coverage against these guys. And, Aaron Rodgers is legitimately great. Okay, there's a lot of things that he does that not a lot of people can do. But even Tom Brady in his last season in New England, when he had practically no help at receiver other than Julian Edelman, they would just double Edelman and then one-on-one man coverage against everyone else, and nobody could get open. And it's well, at that point, what do you want the guy to do, right? And, of course, Max Kellerman goes on there on First Take and goes, oh, Tom Brady's falling off a cliff. He's falling off a cliff. And then once he goes to Tampa Bay with good players, he immediately wins a Super Bowl in a COVID year, right? So you need good weapons that can separate against man coverage in order to keep a defense honest, and the Packers don't have that in the passing game. Aaron Jones, early on in the season, might be legitimately their best receiver coming out of the slot. It wouldn't surprise me to see the Green Bay just overload teams with 2 running back sets, because you got to get your best players on the field, and A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones are definitely 2 of their best offensive players. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see Aaron Jones play a lot in the slot this year. But defense should be fantastic. Top 5 defense probably. Really good run game. And when you have those 2 things plus a solid head coach, which Green Bay has, you're going to be a good football team. And, what separates Green Bay from, say, a Cleveland, who also have all those things, a great defense, good run game, and a good head coach, is that Green Bay has Aaron Rodgers and Cleveland has Jacoby Brissett and a rusty Deshaun Watson. That's the difference, and that's worth 5 spots. I think Green Bay is a wild card team this year. I think they'll be right there neck and neck with Minnesota for the NFC North title. but I do have them outside of my top 10. All right, that's going to do it for today's show, guys. Thanks for stopping by. Tomorrow is the last episode of the Sperdog Football Podcast. You're not going to want to miss it. And until next time, I'll see you tomorrow. Peace, guys.